Come on, Livingston, we're gonna go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We're gonna go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Now can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march to
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We're gonna go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name's Euan and today I'm joined by Angus. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. An interesting weekend for the football. Some good, some bad, some in between. But yeah, not doing too bad. How about yourself? I know you're on the road to recovery. Another setback for you though with a reoccurring infection, I guess.
Yeah, sadly I caught the plague of COVID. Yes, it is still around. It does still exist, people. I managed to catch that clearly when I was coming back from Krakow. I thoroughly enjoyed myself in Krakow watching Scotland top the Nations League group. So maybe enjoyed myself a little bit too much and brought back an unwelcome present with me, which was COVID. So I found that out on Sunday. I tested positive. So yeah, not great. Not great, but I'm on the road to recovery, mate.
Well, it's certainly good that there was no fans at the St Mirren game as was highlighted over the weekend, so nobody else would have got it off of you. So
I'd like to make it clear for anyone listening before they give me a dig. I tested on Friday and Saturday morning and came back negative before I went to the game. And I started coughing on the Sunday, which was my alarm bell, which I don't normally do when I've got the cold. So, yes, before anyone has a dig at me for turning up at the football, I was negative. I did test negative before going. I do that before coaching, so before I get hung out to dry on the podcast.
I was saying a bit protective over that. I'm a wee bit sceptical now, I'm not going to lie.
I've got the tests. As always, you can find this episode as well as all our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick the episode off by discussing their defeat in Paisley as the Lions were left to regret missed chances against St Mirren.
Next up, after a long trip to Inverness last weekend, the Lionesses were back at home and securing another 3 points against Greenock Morton.
We bring back What Does Your Fox In as we discuss the things that gripe us within the beautiful game.
And finally, I caught up with Ramsay Banks from the Staggies View ahead of Ross County's visit to West Lothian on Saturday.
The Lions returned to action as they made the trip to Paisley to take on St Mirren. Despite creating multiple chances and getting a late equaliser, Livy would fall to defeat to a 10-man Buddies. Euan, horrible one to take, isn't it?
Yeah, stinking one to take, to be totally honest with you, Angus. I think I've said it on Twitter to a couple of folk that replied to stuff that we posted up at full time, and I think we've only got ourselves to blame in the sense that we created ample opportunities to win that game of football, and I think Davey kind of touched it. They've defended their box better than we have at the end of the day. I think that's probably the best way of summing the game up. For those who maybe weren't at the game, I think the conditions weren't as good as they maybe looked on TV, and I think the opening couple of chances kind of reflected that. The cross from Newbley that was deflected, which Trevor Carson's had to tip over, it's certainly caught the wind a little bit. And then the corner, which falls to Gogic for the volley. Again, I think the corner's right on top of George because of the wind kind of carrying that ball as well. So the conditions weren't great, but I think the first 15 minutes were quite scrappy. The other thing I would point out is we obviously changed our shape a little bit at the weekend, went to a 3-5-2, almost matching St Mirren up. I think we did that on a couple of occasions against them last year as well, and it kind of nullified the game almost. But second 15 minutes of the half, we were well on top in the game, recycling possession really well, had St Mirren penned in, and we created a couple of really good opportunities. Bahambula had an opportunity flashed across goal, but the glaring one's Pittman when he gets in behind, mistake by Charles Dunn. And it's a poor finish from Pitts. A bit more conviction behind that. The last 15 minutes of the half, it became a little bit of a stalemate. Again, there wasn't a great deal in it. If anything, I'd maybe say St Mirren started to edge it towards the end of the half, but that was only without creating anything in particular. But we had another glaring opportunity right after half time. Oberleis had a header inside the 6-yard box, which is blazed over. And we'll come on to the St Mirren goal, the opening goal. It's so frustrating, so poor. We've switched off. Declan Gallagher's going to take the throw. We've assumed that the ball's coming into our box. Ryan Flynn's peeled off. Watching the sports scene highlights, we've got 4 players that aren't even facing the play as the throw-in's taken. And it's a cracking header by the boy Bacchus, who, let's be honest, should have been sent off for a tackle just before he got subbed off as well. Stephen Robinson, good bit of management when he made that challenge, and the referee was kind of humming and hawing about a second yellow. Took him off a minute later. But we managed to get the penalty, which was looking like it was going to get us back in the game. Great save by the boy Ayunga on the line, albeit I think it's probably a bit pointless of him because Trevor Carson's directly behind him, probably got his good opportunity of making the save from Bruce Anderson. And Sean Kelly, my man Sean Kelly, gutted for the big man. I know Davies spoke about technically very good. He doesn't need me to tell him it's a poor penalty. He's obviously put it over the bar, but I don't know if there was quite a lengthy wait for him to take the penalty. I don't know if that's made any impact on his decision making for the penalty, but we threw everything at it. I think we were only playing with 2 defenders on the park, and Devlin and Oberlai come the end of the game, and we managed to get the equaliser through Bruce Anderson, who had come off the bench. Great to see Bruce back on the score sheet. It's a tremendous cross by Newbley. I was actually a bit surprised he took the cross on from that area on his left side as well. Normally Noobs will try and get in towards the byline, dribble into the box, but he's kind of crossed it in from deep, and Bruce has done exactly what you'd expect a striker to do. He's in that in between the posts, heads it back across the keeper, and you're thinking, right, we're back in this game. We've got a few minutes here to play with, but I think because of that, try to go for the game, essentially, try to go and win the game. We've left ourselves a bit exploited, and St Mirren have kind of taken control of the game a little bit after that, and had a great save from Shamal George from a Tanzer free kick, and then they've got that late winner through Alex Grieve. Nicky Devlin's turned inside the 6-yard box, and it's a tidy enough finish by Grieve. But for me, the performance was there. I've got no qualms with the performance. I think we played very well for large spells of the game, but just need to be more clinical when we get these opportunities, because I think we should have had St Mirren put to bed well before they even took the lead in the game, which is very, very frustrating.
Yeah, the fact that we've not taken our chances, just sums it up. That is the main crux of the game. Pittman's one in the first half is, probably the most glaringly obviously example of that. And yeah, in the end, against 10 men, I can't really even say that we've done enough to, properly win the game, which I think would be disappointing in that manner, that, you've had a glorious opportunity away from home, never mind not even getting a draw. I think we're deserving our draw. I don't think we deserve to lose that game at all. But, that's what happens sometimes when, you're slack at the back. I do think that, maybe those changes did kill us a little bit with, having only 2 defenders on at the time. I know that there was some height still in the team with Guthrie, Newbley, and Bahambula, but they're all very offensive players, not probably used to defending their own box, and in those kind of last minutes in that pressure situation. The best people to have in there. Maybe as we got that equaliser, so we at least had that point. Maybe it would have been sensible decision to bring on the likes of a Kinkar or a Boys or that, just so we had a bit more of a shape. We had like or like natural players kind of within there, so you could go on, you have like those foundations that you could kind of kick on, to go and get that winner. Instead, we find ourselves scrambling, to defend their own box, and ultimately in the end we're punished for it. And yeah, I think the guys will be bitterly disappointed with. I think Davey will be infuriated at the way that they kind of they threw away a decent, what would have been a decent point against a team who's been in cracking form recently. But yeah, as you said, the team will know the opportunities and that have been missed. I mean, the penalty as well. It's just one of those ones that I think as soon as it left his foot, you just seen it rising and rising. And I wonder if we're going to end up with another penalty taker following this. Whether we stick with Kelly, I guess we'll see the next time we get one, which isn't too often, to be fair. We'll probably be waiting another half of a year to get another penalty. But it was a strange one, because I don't think we're nearly that bad. But obviously, the manner of the result that comes in, you can't help but feel just so scunnered and down about it. But at the same time, with those kind of things, when the performance has been like semi decent for the most part, hopefully it's that extra thing that'll kick them on next week, that they'll power them on to work on certain things, to tighten things up and be more clinical, etc. And hopefully at the weekend against Ross County we'll do that.
When we're talking about some of the chances that we had in that game, I think it highlights how crucial it is for us to get Bruce Anderson back in the side and up and running and fit and playing. You saw how he took his goal at the weekend. He obviously, his shot was the one that resulted in the penalty, and then right on the full-time whistle, he hit a volley from the edge of the box, which looked destined for the far corner. He's got that natural poacher's instinct in those scenarios. He gets in between the posts, those little 6-yard box efforts. He tucks away constantly, and I think at the weekend that really highlighted that we need Bruce back in the side, and as I say, fit and playing, and hopefully scoring a few goals like he did last year. In terms of a couple of things we mentioned, change of shape, it seemed to work for the most part. Saw Bahambula playing as a wing back as well, and we saw James Penrice coming because Christian Montano was injured. What did you think of the change of shape, Angus?
For the most part, it was fine. Yeah, I was a little bit sceptical, obviously, because of what we know of Bahambula so far has been, more of an attacking output. So having him, with that kind of defensive responsibility, I was maybe a little bit concerned, but he was completely fine there and looked to get on the ball. There was a couple of nice turns, a couple of decent runs that he had. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by how well he had adapted to that position. Obviously, he's not had the greatest of starts. Obviously he had the red card against Motherwell and that. He's kind of struggled to get an awful lot of time in the team. So seeing him being used as that kind of an option, I was maybe a little bit surprised at, but yeah, no complaints. I think with Penrice as well, maybe still kind of looking to get back to full fitness. I think as well, the fact that Montano's been there and been playing so well, that there's maybe a level of expectations, from player playing there. But again, I don't really think Penrice did anything wrong. Defended well throughout the game up until he was subbed off. And yeah, I guess another player, that's good to be getting more games under his belt and getting back to full fitness, because it makes our squad depth a lot stronger. I think that the squad shape, we've the team shape, the 5 at the back, we've been used to seeing, and it's good to see that. I think this season, I think there was a couple of moments last season when we were trying to hold on to victories or hold on to leads that we changed to that, and we gave up a couple of slack goals. That didn't really seem to be massively the case. I mean, we switch off from a throw in, but I don't really think that's anything to do with kind of changing midway through. So I think it seems to be a bit more comfortable for the group of players that we have, especially with the new signings that we've brought in. But yeah, any comments on the information yourself?
Yeah, I thought it worked well. It's always good that your team can play a variety of ways. You're not stuck on to one system to play. And as you mentioned, we've got the players at our disposal to kind of change shape if we have to. Thought Nicky Devlin was solid in the back 3. Obviously, when you put Nicky in the back 3, you kind of lose that threat from him coming forward. But I think Bahambula on the right-hand side, as you mentioned, he's obviously more of a attacking player, but he did very well on the right-hand side. I thought was very creative, willing to take his man on. He's a little bit unpredictable at times, which I think's not a bad thing at all. And then you had the two big guys up top in Guthrie and Newbley. Newbley was the one that was kind of drifting out onto the flanks every now and then. Guthrie stayed very central and kind of occupied the centre half for St Mirren. So, as I say, there's not a lot of qualms I have with the system, not a lot of qualms I have with the performance. It's just obviously defending our box for those two set plays essentially is what's proved an absolute killer for us. But I was messaging one of the boys in the Scottish Football Forums podcast, Paul, who's a St Mirren fan, and I was saying to him I really like the look of their new goalkeeper, Ayunga, the weekend. But there was that incident with Bacchus as well. Do you think the referee shat the bed on a second yellow card?
It's a difficult one because I don't necessarily think that it's the foul that he did immediately after being booked as a yellow card offence. Not really. But at the same time, as straight after he has just received that caution, it reminds me a lot of, what happened in the opening day of the season with Kincar, or he should have been sent off or not, and we were able to make the change. It's just basically like a mirror situation. I guess, maybe a wee bit further closer to goal, you're probably saying, yeah, it is, and if it's a bit more of a cynical challenge, I think there is an attempt to go for the ball at least. So I would maybe be, caught in the moment, in all honesty. I was absolutely screaming for it, don't worry about that. But, on a wee bit of a reflection, I think, it's maybe pulling a wee bit of straws here, looking for that. But I guess, would I feel differently if, they hadn't had a man sent off prior to, shortly following that as well? Maybe so. But, yeah, for me, I'll be a wee bit more lenient on this time, I feel. Are you of a different opinion?
It's one of those ones I'm purely throwing it out there for debate. I'm very much of the opinion not every challenge is a yellow card. But when you're on a yellow card,
that one definitely is.
You're running the risk, aren't you? So, yeah, it's one of those ones he could have given it. We are in an attacking area of the pitch when he makes the foul. It's one of those ones certainly could have been given, and it might have made a difference as well. But yeah, overall, disappointing afternoon. But I think there's still plenty of positives to take from the performance. And as we mentioned, hopefully when it comes to our next couple of home games that we can keep creating those sort of chances and hopefully take them and get a couple of wins on the board. Next up, after a long trip to Inverness last weekend, the Lionesses were back at home against Greenock Morton. Angus, you managed to take in this game. It was goals from Jen Dodds and Shannon Mulligan that secured a 2-0 win. Obviously, I wasn't able to go for obvious reasons, but was the scoreline as comfortable as it suggests?
Definitely not, in my opinion. It's a strange performance from the Lassies this weekend. I think usually we're used to the team starting quite brightly, and I think this is probably one of the weaker first half performances I've definitely seen from them. To be fair, I'm going to give some credit to Morton. I did think that, in terms of, playing with the ball on the deck and, keeping possession of that, I think that, they're one of the best teams I've seen doing that. There was a lot of nice triangles that they were playing out from the back that they were able to get out of tight situations. In all honesty, they did a lot better with the ball than we did in that first half. There was a lot of nice playing, and, it was kind of the opposite of what we were trying to do, in all honesty. I'm not quite sure what happened, but, there was a lot of impatience with the ball from Livingston. A lot of trying to force the ball over the top rather than recycling the ball or using it well to create openings of any sort. It was just sort of a head up. Oh, somebody's making half a kind of run. Usually Jen Dodds, to be fair, and it was just put it into that corner and hope something comes of it. Yeah, I think for the team it'll be very disappointing, that first half performance. The way that. They really struggled to, kind of properly get a foothold in the game and, create many openings. Lining up with that, the 3-5-2 kind of thing as well. I think the bigger issue came from, the middle of the park this time round. I think you had Gemma Mason, who was sitting, very, very deep, kind of as usual, to the point where she was basically like another centre half. You had like Stacey Calder in the middle, Rebecca Giaconelli playing as a 10. But I think with that, you had Shannon Mulligan up front as well. I think for the most part, you just had a lot of people who were, allowing themselves to be marked in many ways. Gemma was often occupied, by, a forward for Morton. Rebecca was easily being picked up by, a centre mid. Don't think Shannon had, her usual kind of input in the game either, which is going to sound hilarious when I say that she's what she's done later on in the match.
I mean, I've only seen the highlights, Angus, but she's involved heavily in both
Exactly,
goals.
yeah, exactly. But I think she would admit as well that it was one of her quieter games. I think you could probably count the amount of times that she'd got in the ball. Obviously, she was playing up front in maybe an unnatural position, but wasn't able to kind of get a grip of the game like she probably would like to do. So our best chances in the first half came from kind of Morton mistakes as well. There was a short back pass that Shannon Milligan was almost getting on the end of, but the goalkeeper was managing to gather it up. And then the only kind of actual effort on goal came from the Morton right back, who, let me tell you this, Euan, see if this goes in, this is probably goal of the season. But it would have been an own goal. I don't know quite what happens. It must be about 30 yards out, and it's just kind of like a bouncing ball, and the right back just goes to like clear it, and she wraps her foot around it like incredibly, so it goes back towards her own goal, completely loops the goalkeeper, and it just hits the post and bounces just out, just kind of gratefully to the keeper. Everybody just sort of, it was one of those things where nobody could kind of believe what had just happened. Everybody was just in disbelief as this ball just kind of just directed towards the goal. Everybody was expecting the inevitable, and then it just hit the post. So spared the blushes there. But yeah, Morton came into the game much more, created a lot better chances. I'm going to give a bit of credit to Fiona Walker. She made, I think, two blocks in a row that could have been game changing, in all honesty. Charlotte Ferguson in goals as well. There was one that I think there was a slack back pass for us this time, and Charlotte was very quick off her line and made a tremendous block to deny. I think Charlotte had a very good game in that aspect, in all honesty. Defence as a whole as well. Jess Murphy and Tasha Frew, as Morton were coming through, they were putting their bodies in the line and getting in the way of everything. And I think that is one of the brighter aspects, that they'll be talking about as well. I think there was something I seen that last season they only got 4 clean sheets or so, and I think they're up to around that number already with I think 3 at least. So yeah, it's good to see that there's that defensive solidity, even if in other aspects of the game today on Sunday weren't quite up to scratch. But they would get the goal. A bit of contention with it possibly being offside. Stacey gets the ball in the middle of the park, and it's a bit of a stramash. Ends up at Shannon Milligan, who is able to put a crucial toe in through to Jen, and Jen makes no mistake from there. A really, really good finish from the edge of the box, fires it into the bottom right corner. Only Jen's second goal of the season. I think she's been kind of shifted about from up front to like the number 10 role as well, kind of having to do a couple of different roles. But yeah, a very deserved goal from her. I think she worked tirelessly. I think she was that one player, in the forward kind of positions who was always looking for the ball, always looking to like make things happen rather than just looking for the ball over the top. So yeah, credit to Jen for that finish.
Yeah, it was certainly, from watching the highlights, very tidy finish, just across the keeper into the bottom corner. So good to see Jen back in amongst the goals, certainly.
With Ashley, Ashley Fish was on the bench as well. You were kind of looking for somebody to step up, and yeah, Jen did that very well. Going into the second half, I think you're expecting that Morton would come out, kind of do the exact same, but they kind of had the stuffing knocked out of them when Shannon Mulligan gets her goal. So if we're saying that Shannon had a quiet game, she's ended up with an assist and a goal. Perhaps we'll be, kind of chuffed with that. Everybody's talking about, like Erling Haaland, how many times he's touching the ball and that. I guess, if she's getting goals and assists, from touching the ball, about 15 times or that, yeah, you can't have too many complaints. It's really good pressing from Lucy Brown in this instance. Again, like common theme in this game seemed to be, kind of short back passes. That draws the goalkeeper out to, outside of the box, and yeah, the ball kind of like deflects off of a couple of different players, ends up to Shannon Mulligan, and it's a good finish from edge of the box, open goal. Could be easy to to lift that too high or to put it wide or anything like that, but yeah, credit to Shannon. It's another goal for her as well. I think that's 7 goal contributions this season, 4 goals, 3 assists. Yeah, the numbers are looking good for Shannon this season so far. For the rest of the game, though, to be honest, Euan, it was quite a dull affair. I think Morton had very much put a lot into the first half, and that second goal kind of killed them a little bit. Not an awful lot of chances were created from either side in this instance. At the back, Jess, Tash, and Fee were clearing absolutely everything. Again, the disappointment will be that, as the game kind of went on, you never really kind of stepped up that gear, never really took more command of the game and created an abundance of chances. which we're kind of usually used to seeing. But at the same time, it's another 3 points. They comfortably see it out in the end. I mean, Morton, for the best part of the last half an hour, didn't really trouble anything either. Banks played very well and, kind of like shoring everything up. So another 3 points, a clean sheet. I guess when you look at it that way, it's a positive, that they've played off their game in a way, but, still came out with a victory, that sees them go joint top. I think maybe that's something that we'll be looking at now, though, is that they're 6 goals off of Renfrew at the top of the table. They've already beat Renfrew, but, these kind of games where they could maybe a wee bit more attacking quality, a wee bit more quality on the ball, will get that goal difference much closer to them. But yeah, no massive disappointment there. Another 3 points. I don't think they'll have any too many complaints.
Yeah, as you mentioned there was a lot of games last season where they dominated teams and dropped points when they've probably wasted chances. So it's a bit of a role reversal in that they're grinding results out at this stage of the season. There's been a couple of games that I probably describe it as a bit more like that, where they've had to grind out 3 points, but it's a good quality to have. And as you mentioned, it's got them joint top of the league with Renfrew, who they have beaten this season already. So they're in a good position at the start of the campaign. Hopefully they can continue that form and keep picking up wins, as I say, come the end of the season, be in the mix for promotion. But yeah, it doesn't sound like an absolute classic from the ladies team this weekend, but the all-important result is the 3 points and a 2-0 victory.
In honour of our former player, captain and coach landing the Dundee United job in recent weeks, we thought it was an appropriate time to bring back What Does Your Fox In? So Euan, I mean, for people who've never listened to this before, What Does Your Fox In is just basically our gripes on, the beautiful game of football. We've had some half-decent light shouts in the past. There's been a lot of ones from Andy's famed mourning about the kickoff times, the team announcements, the times that, the Twitter team would say, match updates from a certain time or team news from a certain time. And we had, I think of some good ones off the top of my head. Anything you can fill in this gap with?
Oh, I mean, I had players putting the ball outside the quadrant for corners, the overhanging of the ball. That was one of my biggest gripes, I think, actually. Like them taking seconds, initials on their top when there's no other player with the same name in the team. That was another one of my gripes once. But my gripe this week, originally, I was going to say fourth kits after Rangers announcing their fourth kit, but you vetoed me on that after your last one, which was the exploitation of Diego Maradona and Napoli releasing about 40,000 kits.
Napoli having, I think it's at least 16 kits last season. I never won the poll for this, so when you said that, I was like, absolutely not. Like, if you'd ended up winning with what was basically the basis of my idea, I'd be absolutely fuming. But I appreciate, that you came up with something else. I'm hoping it's not too similar to mine in this regard.
So my What Does Your Fox In this week is the use of the monitor in VAR. So we've seen a couple incidents recently in the Premier League down south. We've got VAR coming in Scotland in the next few weeks, more than likely. And you've seen a couple of incidents where referees are sent to the screen. Now, my gripe with it is, surely every decision should be the referees on the park, not somebody in an industrial estate unit making a decision over a mouthpiece. It should always come down to the referee making the decision on the park. So if they're doing any sort of referral, take offside out of it. That's a cut and dry decision in football, right? You're either onside or you're offside. With other decisions, it should be, I think you should take a look at the monitor and it should always be left with the referee on the park. Now, there's been a couple of incidents down south recently. There was one at the weekend there where the referee went to the monitor and went, no, I'm sticking with my original decision, which is really refreshing to see. But that's the referee controlling the game on the park. I think when somebody is overturning a decision who's not involved in the game, essentially, who's not there on the premises of the game, and it's overturning, I think that's what causes frustration for both players and fans and managers alike, is that it's not the person who's actually refereeing the game who's making the final call on a decision, it's somebody else. So they need to make more use of this monitor. It's a great facility to have, but that's what it should be. It should be a referral. Referee should go and look at the monitor, and then the decision is still the referees on the pitch at all times. It's not somebody else who's, as I say, sitting in an industrial estate watching the game, who has a different perspective, more than likely, of what. Because with football, there's a lot of perception decisions. For example, like a handball, or there's another decision down south. Who was it? Thiago Silva's handball, where he's grabbed the ball twice, but it's been somebody at Stockley Park that's overturned the decision rather than the referee on the pitch. I think that's baffling, personally. It should be, go and look at that. I think there's a bit of controversy with that decision. Go and look at it, and the referee makes that decision on the pitch. Goes, you know what? Actually, that is a handball. He's denied a goal scoring opportunity. That's my what does your fox in, and I was trying to keep it relevant to what's coming in Scottish football in the coming weeks with VAR.
So with that, would you prefer, see, every time there's kind of a contentious decision, would you like the referee to go, kind of just go straight to the monitor, try and cut out as little time as we can, get him to go straight away, he can have a look if it's, or are you still wanting that initial consultation where the people elsewhere are looking over it and try to decide, and then, like they say to the referee, for him to go?
I still think the initial consultation, fine and easier. Look, I would maybe have another look at that decision, personally. You've still got somebody else looking at it, but the final decision is always the referee on the pitch when he goes to look at the monitor. I think if the referee's made a decision in the game, he can't then go, oh, can I look at the monitor again on that? I think if it's referred to him by VAR, because the whole point of VAR, it's a clear and obvious error, isn't it? So if somebody in Stockley Park, for example, will use the Premier League down south, has said, look, I think there's an error in that decision, sends them to the screen, but it's still the referee's decision because he's looking at the incident again, rather than somebody telling him, no, overturn that, that's not a handball, or something like that. For example, I'll use the Scotland-Ukraine game with the handball. I think UEFA actually use VAR really well in the Champions League. It's very quick, it's very fluid. And the handball incident in the Ukraine game clearly wasn't a handball. I hit the boy in the face. I was at the opposite end of the park screaming for a penalty, might add. Right. But he's gone, go to the monitor and have a look at it. He's gone, right, it's clearly not a handball, and has overturned it and given the corner. So the decision was still the referees on the pitch rather than somebody elsewhere.
Fair enough. I think it's going to be one that's going to be very topical. Well, obviously, as VAR comes into our game. I think there's already talks of it being moved a wee bit early. I think there was apparently 3 games we're kind of testing it at the weekend, including ours as well. Yeah, it's always going to be an interesting one. There's going to be plenty of debate and chat over VAR stuff when it comes to Scotland, which is going to be mildly entertaining at times, probably tedious overall, but yeah, fair enough. I think for me, I was trying to think of one last night and this morning, and mine's is just essentially the myth that the Premier League is this uber competitive league. When was the last, you see the Premier League fans and all that all the time, slag off La Liga, or only Barca, Real and Atletico can win it. Slag off Bundesliga, or only Bayern are going to win it. Slag off any other league essentially being like, oh, it's not as exciting. Anybody can win the Premier League. There's like 3 or 4 teams who can do it. No, there's not. There's one team who's going to win the Premier League, and it's the same team who's won the Premier League the last 2 years in a row now. Liverpool had it that 1 year in between, then City won it 2 years before again. It's an absolute myth that anybody can win this league. And I know you're probably going to say, like, oh, Arsenal are top of the league right now. Arsenal are not going to win it. Not at squad depth or anything like that. Man City are just a bunch of freaks who are clearly going to win everything.
A bunch of freaks.
Well, mainly that freak up top who's just no human. Haaland. You can tell this is a person with a preference for Man United talking after a shocking defeat at the Etihad. But I just get so sick of seeing like this branding in different like leagues where it's so clear in the Premier League. They slag off the Scottish League for it. They say, oh, only Celtic and Rangers can do it. In all honesty, our league right now is more competitive than theirs because only one team's going to be going for it in them. When was genuinely the last time that 3 teams at least challenged for the Premier League? Are you going back to the early 2000s where it was Chelsea, Man U, and Arsenal? I think there was 1 year that Man U finished third, and it was by about 15 points as well. So you can even say it's like a proper title race. I'm not too sure, but like it's been so long that this myth has kind of been portrayed for that the Premier League's like this massively competitive league. In reality, they're all just crap. Like there are a lot of teams in there who are just absolutely mince. You're talking about Man United who have spent how much money? Shocking. Liverpool this season, absolutely dreadful. Arsenal pretty decent to be fair. Tottenham up and down. Chelsea, you know what Chelsea are like as well. Then you look at like some of the teams who are lower in the table, absolute dross. But they keep on going on about it as being such high quality in that they're all garbage. Like apart like, and maybe I'm being a wee bit too emphatic with this and stuff, but it's just so overhyped. And I think you look right now, you look across like the different leagues right now. You look at the situation in Germany where there's a good couple of teams who are taking points off each other. I think Bayern Munich are not top at the moment as well. The Italian leagues, full of intrigue in that as well. In Spain, there's competition in these leagues as well, but because it's not the Premier League, because it's not got the commercialization and the kind of propaganda of Sky Sports and BT Sport behind them that it's portrayed as this thing, but it's just not, Ian.
The thing I always use with the Premier League is folk describe it as the best league in the world. I would say it's the most watched league in the world, and that it's got the most financial backing in the world, but it doesn't necessarily make it the best league in the world. As you mentioned, if you go and look who's won the Champions League over the last, say, 10 years, what clubs have won it? Liverpool won it, Chelsea won it in the last 10 years from England. But out with that, it's the Spanish clubs. Bayern Munich have won it as well and amongst there. So if they were so dominant, Man City, the team you've just mentioned, haven't they won it? With all their money, still haven't won it. They got to a final, but they've still not won it. So maybe that's my Man United allegiance coming out there as well. But
just taking digs at them.
Just taking digs at City. They'll always be the small club in Manchester. But it's I agree. I agree to an extent that it's not all it's hyped up to be. I watch the odd game here and there in the flat, and sometimes it's bloody boring. Some of the games are like they'll advertise like Bournemouth against Crystal Palace on Super Sunday. Is it super? It's like that doesn't scream Super Sunday to me personally. And half the time the games are pretty dull. Sometimes you get the odd one where it is a cracking game of football and you're lucky to have decided to tune in for it. For example, the Manchester Derby, you got 9 goals at the weekend in fairness, but 9 goals that suggests it was closer. It wasn't. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not personally, it's not all it's hyped up to be. It's no cinch. That is the one thing I'll say, Angus. It's no the cinch. Give me Scottish football over anything any day of the week. Scottish football is prime entertainment, and anyone who says differently doesn't know what they're talking about.
I'm glad that they were at least on the same page with that. The cinch will forever rule. Ryland Clark is better than Gary Neville. Let's just it's just you see it for years and that now. It keeps on creeping up. They keep on like doing everything for it, but blow the tosh in my opinion. But yeah, I think if you're listening, let us know what you think about both our picks here. I think two pretty decent ones, I would say, to be fair. 2 things that aren't going to go away anytime soon as well. But yeah, let us know what your favourite is. And if there's anything else that you guys have gripes about, give us a shout. Messages on Twitter, reply to the links that we have. Yeah, let us know what does your fox in about modern football.
I'm delighted to welcome Ramsay Banks from the Staggies View back onto Talk Livi. Ramsay, how you doing, mate?
Not bad. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm all good, mate. Other than having the plague of COVID once again, other than that, I'm all good. But let's have a look at Ross County's campaign last year. Last time we spoke to you was when we had the game. I think it was back in February up in Dingwall. You must be pretty happy finishing top 6 last year, but is there maybe a hint of what could have been in terms of trying to get into Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since I think in the games we played towards the tail end against Dundee United and Motherwell, I think we were very much in with a chance of winning those games, and we ended up losing both of them. but it like we were like scintillating to watch at times. So and I think that's why like we had like a singing section and everything behind us. So I'm not sure there's like any regrets looking back at it because like we were really exciting, but it was a shame not to take that extra step.
Yeah, as you say, you were an exciting team to watch, but you've had a pretty dismal start to the season last year, which makes kind of finishing top six all the more
Yeah.
remarkable for you guys.
Yeah, in our start to the season last year, like we we weren't bad. We were just like guaranteed at least one howler a game, and it got punished every time. So like we didn't necessarily deserve to win like all those games or anything, but we there was definitely an element of luck there.
Yeah. And there's been a fair bit of movement in and out of county over the summer. The kind of main players that have moved on: Charles Cook, who was the league's top goal scorer, Joseph Hungbo as well, who was a constant threat on the other side for county, are the kind of high profile departures. How big a miss are they already maybe proven to be this season? And out of the new arrivals, who have you got that looks promising so far?
With Charles Cook and Hungbo, I'm not convinced that this season. I think if we have those players this season, we maybe do a little better. But I think our problems, because we haven't started well, our problems are maybe more through the middle. And I don't think, like, with how poor we are through the middle right now, I don't think the chances would be created for that type of player. With regards to who's come in, I think maybe the big one is Jan Danda. Came through Liverpool's academy and amassed about 50 appearances for Swansea in the English Championship, but he's been limited to quite a few sub appearances. And I think with how poor we've been through the middle, he needs to start starting games. A player of his quality, we need to start getting him in. Another one, I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here, sorry, is Victor Laturi. We signed from Cavalry in Canada. We actually paid money for him. He's a young player, kind of box to box, but he's got the skills. He's very technical, very good range of passing. I think if we're going to get better through the middle, we need to start playing him as well.
Who was the boy that you signed that went viral, that cleared the ball off his own goal line?
William Akio. So Laturi signed from Cavalry. Akio signed from Valor, both in Canada. They're brothers. To be fair, he scored from about that distance against Aberdeen, so all's forgiven, I guess.
It's certainly a very cinch signing, isn't it, when that went viral and then he arrives at Ross County, didn't it? But it's been a tough start to the campaign for Ross County. You progressed in the League Cup and have been eventually knocked out by Celtic, but it's 1 win and 8 in the league. What have you made of the start to the campaign?
I think the main thing is that we've got like when we actually get the ball on the ground and play through the middle, we look all right. I actually haven't been able to see like a whole lot of us. I've been able to see like fragmented little parts because the first part of the season I was always working during the games and now I've moved down and everything. But from what I've seen, we it's not even that we panic. We try the long and short of it, in my opinion, is that we try and play too many long balls from the back. And I know we've got Jordan White, who you're familiar with, who can win those headers, who was
Yeah.
actually like statistically won the most headers and I think attacking areas over the course of last season. But he's not a magician. He can't jump 10 feet. So the aimless balls from the back have to stop. And as I said earlier, we have to play our more technical players in the middle who can, like no one's asking for tiki taka, but the fact is when we play through the middle, we play better.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier on, County were pretty attractive to watch last year, pretty free scoring, but you're currently the joint lowest scorers in the league. I think it's 4 goals you've scored in the league. Is this a concern for you at this early stage in the season?
It's the main concern, I think, which is a change because we're usually like decent when it comes to scoring goals, but an absolute scare at the back. Obviously, I'm not a football manager, so like I'm talking about the midfield, but I'm not like 100% sure like where the goals are going to come from. So last season, obviously with Charles Cook, the goals mostly came from the wings. Now we've got three strikers who we signed one in Jordi Hula from Doncaster, who was I think the one signed to be the classic striker running in behind. But the three strikers we've got right now, we've got Alex Samuel, but he's injured. He's been injured for ages. Are more like hold up strikers, good first touch, get people running past them, etc.
Before talking about the game itself, I've seen that both clubs have kind of teamed up in terms of making an effort to offer community tickets for all supporters for both this fixture and then the reverse fixture in January. How good an initiative do you think that is from the clubs, and should other clubs maybe try and follow suit in terms of attracting younger fans to come and watch Premiership football?
It's an excellent initiative, especially since it's so difficult to get to games these days. I know for County, obviously, it's difficult to get down the road. And despite what Pine Barberell has to say, I'm sure it's really difficult for Livy fans as well. So yeah, so it's a brilliant initiative and something that, yeah, as you said, all clubs should be doing.
And onto the game itself, what can we expect from County when they come to West Lothian on Saturday, and what sort of system have you typically been setting up with so far this season?
First of all, what you can expect is, as Livy away always is, a disappointing 1-0 loss. Well, for County, not for you. In terms of formation, we play usually like a 4-2-3-1. It's pretty standard. We insist on sticking with like that one man behind the striker, which doesn't really work because they usually just get marked out of games since the ball doesn't come to them. I think you can probably expect to see the same. I think Malky Mackay is a man who very much sticks to his guns. We saw last season he played the same formation the first 10 games, wasn't working. People were calling for his head. And eventually he stuck with what he had planned since pre-season. And we got that 5-0 win away at Dundee where it all clicked. So I think he's bargaining on the same thing happening, and just everything he's planning is going to come together. So you can expect to see the same formation, I reckon.
And who are the real danger men that we need to be wary of, Ramsay, when you guys visit Livingston?
Despite his like form in Canada that saw him go viral, William Akio has been our most dangerous player by far in the past couple of weeks. I didn't get to see him against Hibs because I couldn't catch the game anywhere. I literally couldn't find it. Apart from him, I heard that Awura Edwards didn't have a great game at the weekend, but that man is rapid. And his like, it's early days, but his dribbling is like some of the best to watch that I've seen. Well, to be fair, we've been lucky, especially last year with Charles Cook, but Edwards is absolutely outstanding when it comes to his dribbling. From midfield, I'd like to name someone, but as I said, it's just been so poor. I'd like to name Danda, but you know he's been stuck to the bench. So I suppose we'll see.
Nice one. And in terms of a prediction, Ramsay, you've already said it, a 1-0 disappointing result. Are you sticking with that for the game on Saturday?
I mean, I'll be traveling there, so I hope not. But I can't remember. I think since you've been back up, like I think we swapped places in the league when we went down and you went up, so we didn't play that season. I can't remember a positive result at Livingston. So I'm gonna go. There was a draw when we had like Cancola score the screamer, so I'll go for the same again, probably a 1-1 draw. We've got a game tomorrow night against Motherwell, which is I think a must win at this point. That would like give a better indication of where we're at. But I'm going for a 1-1 draw.
Well, Ramsay, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Obviously, you're one of the hosts on the Staggies View. Let our listeners know if they want to tune into that as well, where they can find you and what sort of content you guys produce.
So we're over on Spotify first and foremost. We post monthly podcasts. We used to go for weekly, but it was just, oh my God. Yeah, so you can find us over on Spotify. We're on Google Podcast as well now. And you can also find us chatting rubbish on Twitter and Instagram.
Magic. Well, I encourage anyone to go and listen to the guys. The content they do produce is very, very good. But Ramsay, thank you for coming on the podcast to preview the game. I say this in the nicest possible way. I hope you have a miserable afternoon when it comes to 3 p.m, but best of luck for the rest of the season as well. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in, week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livi to find us. You'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify, We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you will find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week, and thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. As always, let's hope for another great week following the Lothian's finest football team.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Amberville. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Amberville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston.